Chosen one, I need you to stop everything right now, not in a moment, right now. Because what is about to pour into your spirit over the next 30 minutes is not something you accidentally stumbled upon. This is not a random video that appeared in your feed because of some algorithm that had nothing better to offer you today. This appeared because something that operates far above the level of human technology, something divine, something intentional, something that has been watching your entire journey from beginning to this exact moment, placed it directly in your path. And the reason it placed it here, the reason this message was moved into your life at this specific time, is because someone said something about you that was not true. And God is done letting that lie go unanswered. Someone defined you. Someone took it upon themselves to look at your life, your struggles, your pain, your process, your becoming, and decided they knew what you were. They spoke words over you. Maybe they spoke them to your face. Maybe they spoke them behind your back. Maybe they whispered them to people who mattered to you. Maybe they said them loudly in rooms full of people who had no business believing a single syllable that came out of their mouths. And those words, however they were delivered, carried a weight that you have been living under for longer than you should have had to. You were called too much, too sensitive, too broken, too unstable, too difficult, too emotional, too damaged, too far gone, too unreliable, too weak, too lost, too complicated, too this, not enough that. And somewhere along the way, in the quiet exhaustion of being constantly misdefined by people who never truly saw you, some part of you began to wonder if they were right. I need to stop you right there. Because that wondering, that quiet question that arose in your most vulnerable moments, that is not the truth speaking. That is the wound speaking. And wounds do not tell the truth about who you are. Wounds tell you the story of what was done to you. And what was done to you, chosen one, was a lie. A deliberate, spiritually motivated, precisely targeted lie that was spoken over you by people who recognized something in you that they could not control, could not contain, and could not compete with. And because they could not match it, they tried to misname it. They tried to reframe your power as your problem. They tried to call your depth instability. They tried to call your sensitivity weakness. They tried to call your spiritual intensity dysfunction. And they did it because if they could get you to believe their definition of you, they could slow down everything God was building in your life without ever having to face the truth of what they were really afraid of. You, the real you, the full you, the you that God actually made. Type yes in the comments right now if someone in your life has spoken words over you that you now understand were never the truth. If a definition was placed on you that never fit, that never felt right, that always sat wrong in your spirit, even when you were too exhausted to argue against it, type yes. Because that discomfort you felt around their definition of you was not confusion. That was discernment. That was your spirit rejecting a label that was never meant to stick. Listen carefully. Because I am about to say something that is going to reframe everything you have been carrying. The people who lied about you were not confused. They were not misunderstanding you out of genuine inability to comprehend who you were. Some of them may have started there. But the ones whose words went deepest, the ones whose definitions followed you the longest, the ones whose voices you can still hear in your quiet moments even now, they were not confused. They were threatened. There is a specific kind of person in this world who, when they encounter a chosen one, does not respond with curiosity or admiration or even neutral observation. They respond with an immediate, instinctive, spiritually triggered fear, not the kind of fear that makes them run away, the kind of fear that makes them attack, the kind of fear that says, if I cannot become what this person is, I will destroy what this person represents. If I cannot match their light, I will convince everyone around me that their light is actually darkness. If I cannot rise to their level, I will pull them down to mine. That is what happened to you. The lie that was spoken over you was not an accident of misperception. It was a spiritual attack dressed in human language. It was darkness operating through a human vessel, targeting a chosen one with precision, aiming at the very places where your gifts were most visible, because those were the places that felt most threatening. Your sensitivity was attacked because your sensitivity makes you spiritually perceptive in ways that see through the masks others wear. Your emotional depth was attacked because your emotional depth connects you to people and to God in ways that others cannot replicate. Your intensity was attacked because your intensity, when properly channeled into your purpose, is one of the most powerful forces that has ever been placed inside a human being. They did not lie about your weakness. They lied about your strength, because your strength was the thing they could not afford to let you fully step into. Type 777 in the comments if you trust that God always knew the truth about you, even when you were surrounded by people who were speaking lies. If there is a part of you that has always known, even through the doubt, that what they said about you simply did not match what you felt in your deepest places about who you were created to be, type 777. Because that knowing was not arrogance. That knowing was God's voice inside you, refusing to be silenced by human deception. Now I want to tell you something about the nature of the lie that was spoken over you, because understanding this is going to completely change how you carry yourself from this moment forward. A lie spoken over a chosen one never stays small. It is designed to grow. It is planted as a seed in the minds of people around you and then watered by repetition, by strategic timing, by the calculated involvement of people who had influence over your life or your reputation. The person who started the lie about you understood, even if only on a subconscious spiritual level, that one voice saying something about you would not be enough. So they built a chorus. They recruited believers. They created an environment where the false narrative about who you were became the accepted story. And you found yourself surrounded by a version of yourself that did not match the person you knew yourself to be on the inside, and with no clear way to correct it without looking defensive, without looking exactly like what they said you were. This is one of the cruelest mechanics of spiritual warfare against chosen ones. The attack is designed so that the target cannot defend themselves without appearing to confirm the accusation. If you push back, you are proving you are difficult. If you get emotional, you are proving you are unstable. If you distance yourself, you are proving you are antisocial. If you succeed despite everything, they find a way to reframe even your success as something suspicious or undeserved. The trap was built specifically for someone with your particular combination of qualities, because whoever built it understood those qualities well enough to engineer a cage around them. That level of targeted spiritual attack does not happen to ordinary people living ordinary lives. It happens to chosen ones whose purpose, if fully activated, would disrupt the plans of the very forces that were operating through the people who attacked you. You were never ordinary. The attack on you confirmed that more than anything else ever could. Ordinary people do not require this level of coordinated opposition. Ordinary gifts do not threaten this deeply. Ordinary destinies do not generate this much resistance. The war that was waged against your reputation, your identity, your self-perception, your sense of worth and belonging, that war was the enemy's admission that you are something significant enough to be worth fighting against. And chosen one, I need you to let that fully land. The magnitude of the lie they told about you is directly proportional to the magnitude of what God placed inside you. They do not send heavy artillery for small targets. And what was sent against you was not small. Comment Amen in the comments if you are beginning to understand that the attack on you was always evidence of your anointing and never evidence of your inadequacy. If something in your spirit is shifting as you hear this, if the narrative about yourself that you have been carrying is beginning to crack open and reveal the truth underneath it, comment Amen. Because this is the moment. This is the cracking open, and what comes through the crack is the light of who you actually are. Let me speak now about what God says, because we have spent time with what they said, and what they said deserves to be fully named and fully confronted, but we cannot stay there, because what they said is not where your story lives. What God says is where your story lives. And what God says about you is not a gentle correction of what they said. It is not a slight adjustment or a partial reframe. It is the complete and total opposite. Not because God is being generous or kind or merciful in a way that overlooks the truth, but because God, who created you, who designed every detail of your being before you drew your first breath, who wove your purpose into the fabric of your existence before the world had any opinion about you at all, sees you with a clarity and a completeness that no human being has ever come close to achieving. What God says about you is this: you are not broken, you are being built. There is a profound difference between those two states that is almost invisible from the outside and unmistakable from the inside. Broken things are done. They have reached the end of their structural integrity and have nothing left to offer in their current form. But things that are being built, things that are in the active process of becoming what they were designed to be, they look messy from the outside. They have exposed edges and unfinished surfaces and periods where the work happening inside them is invisible. They go through seasons where they look, to an untrained observer, like damage. But the builder knows the difference, and God, who is building something in you that has been in construction since before you were born, has never for a single moment confused the process of your becoming with the evidence of your breaking. They called you too sensitive. God calls you spiritually perceptive. They called you unstable. God calls you deeply feeling. They called you too much. God calls you exactly right for what He designed you to carry. They called you broken. God calls you in process. They called you a failure. God calls you in preparation. They called you damaged. God calls you refined. Every word they chose to diminish you, God has a corresponding word that reveals the truth. And the truth, chosen one, is not just slightly better than what they said. The truth is categorically, completely, cosmically opposite to everything they tried to make you believe about yourself. Type 1111 in the comments if you are receiving this truth right now. If something that has been tight in your chest for a long time is beginning to loosen as you hear God's definition of you replacing theirs, type 1111. Because that loosening is healing beginning. That is the grip of a false identity releasing. And what comes after that release is the most powerful experience a chosen one can have, which is the freedom of being fully, unapologetically, exactly who God made them to be. I want to address something that chosen ones who have been lied about for a long time often struggle with, even after they have intellectually understood the truth about themselves. It is the body memory of the lie. The way the false definition was absorbed not just into the mind, but into the nervous system, into the way you carry yourself in rooms, into the way you hold back in conversations, into the way you apologize for your gifts before you offer them, into the way you shrink in the moments that were designed for you to expand. The lie did not just live in your thoughts, it lived in your posture. It lived in your hesitation. It lived in the automatic self-correction you made every time you were about to let the real you show up fully because some part of you was still half expecting to be punished for it the way you were punished before. This is one of the deepest forms of damage a spiritual attack through false words can cause. It creates an internal monitor that polices your own expression on behalf of the people who lied about you. Even after they are no longer in your life, even after you have found people who see you differently, even after you have intellectually rejected every word they said, the body still remembers, the nervous system still flinches. And that flinch, that automatic pulling back from your own fullness, is perhaps the most heartbreaking legacy of the lie, because it means that even in the spaces where you are safe, even in the moments where the truth is welcomed, you sometimes cannot fully show up for the very life you have been working toward because some part of you is still waiting for someone to tell you that you are too much. I want to speak directly to that part of you right now. The part that still flinches. The part that still monitors. The part that still apologizes before it enters. The part that still makes itself small in moments that were specifically designed for it to be large. I want to speak to that part and say this with all the gentleness and all the firmness that the truth requires. It is safe now. The people who required you to be small in order to feel comfortable around you are no longer the ones determining the size of your life. God is. And God does not need you to shrink. God has never needed you to shrink. The spaces He has prepared for you ahead, the rooms, the relationships, the opportunities, the assignments, they were all built to the exact dimensions of who you fully are. Not the edited version, not the apologetic version, not the version that pre-censors itself to avoid making people uncomfortable. The full version, the real version, the version that was there before the lie arrived, the version that has been fighting to exist through everything that tried to extinguish it. That version, all of it, welcomed, needed, expected, irreplaceable. Like this video right now as a declaration that you are choosing to step out of the false identity and into the truth of who God made you. Not because like matters in itself, but because the act of choosing, the act of physically affirming that you are done agreeing with the lie, sends a signal through your own spirit that the season of smallness is over. Let that click be your line in the sand. Everything before it was survival. Everything after it is becoming. Now I want to speak about the people who believed the lie, because there is a whole category of people in your story who were not the original source of the false narrative, but who received it, accepted it, and in some cases, spread it. Some of them were people you loved. Some of them were people whose opinion mattered deeply to you. Some of them were people you never expected to believe a lie about you over the truth they had witnessed with their own eyes. And their believing hurt in a way that was almost harder to carry than the original lie itself. Because the lie from the enemy was expected on some level. But the betrayal of people who should have known better, who had evidence of who you really were, and chose the narrative anyway, that kind of pain reaches a different depth entirely. I want to say something honest about those people. Some of them were manipulated. Some of them were operating from their own wounds and their own fears and their own limitations. And they defaulted to the easier story because questioning it would have required a courage they had not yet developed. Some of them genuinely did not understand what they were participating in. And for those ones, there is grace available when you are ready to access it. Not forced grace. Not performed forgiveness that masks real pain. Real grace that arrives naturally when healing has done enough of its work that the truth about those people becomes visible alongside the truth about what they did. But some of them knew. Some of them made a choice. Some of them looked at the evidence of who you really were and decided to believe the lie anyway because the lie served something in them. Because your diminishment made them feel safer. Because your struggle confirmed something they needed to believe about the world or about themselves. And for those people, I am not going to offer you a spiritual instruction to forgive in this moment. Because forgiveness is a process and a journey, and it moves at the pace of real healing, not at the pace of what sounds spiritually impressive to say out loud. What I will offer you is this. Those people do not have the final word on your story. They never did. They simply had a louder voice than they deserved for longer than they should have had it. And the volume of their voice is being turned down right now by the only voice whose volume has ever truly mattered. God's. Type 222 in the comments if you are ready to release the weight of every false word that was ever spoken over you. Not because it didn't hurt. Not because it wasn't real, but because you have decided that you will no longer let the lies of limited people determine the trajectory of the unlimited life God has prepared for you. Type 222 if you are ready to lay it down and walk forward into the truth. Something is happening right now in the spiritual atmosphere around chosen ones who have been lied about and who are beginning to awaken to the truth of who they really are. The false narrative is crumbling, not because of anything dramatic or confrontational, not because of arguments won or accusations answered, but because truth has a nature that lies do not possess. Truth does not require maintenance. Truth does not require constant reinforcement. Truth does not need to recruit believers or silence doubters or manage the narrative. Truth simply exists. And over time, with patient, inexorable certainty, truth always rises to the surface. It always reveals itself. It always finds its way into the light, regardless of how many layers of deception were placed on top of it. The people who built a false story about you spent enormous energy maintaining it. And that energy, that constant effort to keep the lie alive, is itself a form of exhaustion that the truth never experiences. The truth about you has been patiently waiting, and it has been rising all along, quietly, consistently, in ways you may not have fully noticed, but that the people who built the lie have absolutely been noticing. They have seen the cracks forming. They have watched the narrative begin to lose its hold on people who once believed it without question. They have felt the ground shifting beneath a story that was always built on sand. And that is why some of them are louder right now than they have ever been. Because people who are losing a narrative always become louder right before they lose it completely. Listen carefully. The loudness of opposition is not a sign that the lie is winning. It is a sign that the truth is too close to the surface for the lie to be comfortable anymore. When you see the people who defined you falsely becoming more vocal, more aggressive, more desperate in their insistence that their version of you is the real one, do not interpret that as the truth being in danger. Interpret it as the lie being in its final hours. Truth does not panic, lies do. And what you are witnessing in the behavior of those who built a false story about you is the panic of a lie that can feel its own ending approaching. Type truth in the comments if you have recently seen or felt the false narrative around your name beginning to crack, if you have noticed people who once believed the lie starting to question it, if you have seen the carefully constructed story that was built around who you were supposed to be beginning to show its seams. Type truth. Because those cracks are not random. Those cracks are the fingerprints of God pressing on the other side of the wall that was built to keep your real self contained, and walls that God is pressing on do not stand for much longer. I want to speak now about something that is deeply important for chosen ones who are walking through the process of having their true identity restored after years of living under a false one. It is the process of relearning who you are. Because when a false identity has been worn for long enough, when the lie has been lived under for enough seasons, the true self can feel almost unfamiliar. Stepping into the truth of who you are after years of performing a false version can feel strange, even uncomfortable. The real you, the fully expressive, deeply feeling, spiritually powerful, gifted beyond what you have allowed yourself to claim, unapologetically alive version of you, that version may feel almost too big to inhabit comfortably after years of compression into something smaller. This is normal. This is part of the process. Healing is not always comfortable, even when it is good. Growing back into the truth of who you are requires a stretching that can be temporarily disorienting. You may find yourself in moments of genuine power and pull back from them because they feel too exposed. You may find yourself in relationships where you are truly seen and feel an inexplicable urge to sabotage them because being seen feels dangerous, even when it is safe. You may find yourself on the edge of opportunities that are perfectly aligned with who you really are and hesitate at the threshold because some part of you is still waiting for the punishment that used to come whenever you let the real you show up. This is not weakness. This is the nervous system catching up to a truth that the spirit already knows. And the only way through it is patience. Grace toward yourself. The same grace you have extended to so many other people, turned inward, given to the part of you that is still learning, slowly and courageously, that it is safe to be real. God has been preparing you for this moment, for this specific season of coming back into yourself. Every hard thing you walked through, every season of isolation where you had nothing to hold on to but the quiet truth inside you about who you were, Every moment of pain that somehow did not break you, even when it seemed like it should have. Every time you chose to be real, even in a small way, when the easier choice was to perform the false version one more time. All of that was preparation for this. All of that was God preserving the core of you through seasons that tried to dissolve it. And what He preserved is intact. What He protected is still there. The real you, the full you, the one they lied about because they recognized something extraordinary and could not stand it, that you survived everything they threw at it, because you were chosen before the attack began. And what is chosen by God is not dismantled by people. Type "still here" in the comments if the real you is still alive inside you. If underneath everything that was done to suppress it, cover it, redefine it, attack it, and diminish it, the real you is still breathing, still fighting, still reaching for the truth of what it was made to be. Type "still here" because that survival is not small. That is one of the most powerful testimonies a chosen one can carry. The testimony that says everything they sent against the real me failed. I am still here, still real, still becoming, still chosen. Now I want to speak prophetically about what is coming, because this message is not only about what happened behind you, the restoration of your true identity, the full collapse of the false narrative, the moment when everyone who believed the lie finally sees the truth. All of that is not just coming, it is already in motion. God does not restore halfway. When He moves to vindicate a chosen one who has been falsely defined, He does not simply correct the record in quiet. He reveals, He demonstrates. He allows the truth to emerge through your life in a way that is so undeniable, so visible, so consistent with the reality of who you actually are, that the people who once heard the lie and believed it will find themselves unable to reconcile what they were told with what they are now watching. And in that moment of irreconcilable cognitive dissonance between the lie they accepted and the truth they are witnessing, they will know, they will all know, every single one of them, the gifts they said you didn't have are going to be on full display. The character they said was flawed is going to be the very thing that defines how you show up in the spaces God opens for you. The depth they called a liability is going to be the very thing that makes you irreplaceable in every room you enter. The sensitivity they mocked is going to be the very thing that allows you to connect with and serve and heal people in ways that no one who mocked it is capable of doing. Everything they named as your weakness is going to emerge as your greatest asset. Everything they called your curse is going to operate as your anointing, and the people who built their understanding of you on the lie are going to have to sit with the full weight of how wrong they were, not because you arranged it, not because you performed for their benefit, but because the truth of who you are, unleashed and unhindered, is simply too real and too powerful to be confused with anything they described. Like this video one more time, if you believe with everything in you that your true identity is rising and that no lie that was spoken over you has the power to stop what God built inside you from emerging fully into the light, let that be your act of faith, your declaration, your agreement with the truth that has been waiting patiently inside you through every season of false definition. I want to speak now directly to the chosen ones who are in the most painful place in this journey, the ones who are still fully surrounded by people who believe the lie, who have not yet seen the cracks forming in the false narrative, who are still living in environments where the false definition of them is treated as fact, where the people with power in their lives, family, workplace, community, social circles, are still operating toward them based on a version of them that was constructed by someone who was afraid of who they really were. If that is where you are, if the truth has not yet visibly broken through in your situation, I need to speak to you with specific care and specific intention. You are not forgotten. The invisibility of God's work in your situation right now is not proof that God is absent from it. It is proof that God is working on it at a depth and a scale that requires more time to complete than surface-level situations require. When the preparation beneath the surface is greater, the emergence above the surface takes longer, but the emergence is inevitable. It is not a possibility. It is not a hope. It is a spiritual certainty that operates with the same reliability as the laws of nature. The truth about you will rise. It has no other option. Lies are temporary by design. They require energy to maintain, and they run out of that energy eventually. Truth is self-sustaining. It requires nothing to keep it alive because it simply is. And what simply is cannot be permanently buried by what was deliberately constructed. Hold on. Stay real inside yourself, even while performing patience outside yourself. Keep the true you alive in the quiet places where no one can reach it. Keep feeding it with truth even when everything outside is feeding you lies. Talk to God about who you really are. Ask Him to keep showing you the truth about yourself in the moments when the lies around you feel loudest. Because He will. He has been doing it your whole life, even in the seasons when you couldn't feel it. He has been whispering the truth into the deepest place in you through every season when everything outside was shouting the lie. And that whisper, quiet as it has sometimes been, has kept the real you alive through everything. It will keep doing so until the moment arrives for the truth to emerge fully. And that moment is coming. It is already written. It is already decided. And no amount of human opposition can rewrite what God has already determined will be. Type "chosen" in the comments right now. Not as a title, not as a spiritual concept, as a personal declaration, a statement from your own spirit about your own life. Type it as the truth that was spoken over you before you were born by the only voice that has ever had the authority to speak over you. The voice that called you chosen before any human voice had the opportunity to call you anything else. Type "chosen" and let it be a seal. Let it be a correction. Let it be the beginning of the end of every false name you were ever given and the beginning of the full inhabiting of the true name God has always known you by. I want to come to the final movement of this message now. And I want to use these last moments to say something to you that I believe with everything in me is exactly what your spirit needs to carry forward from this video into the rest of your day, your week, your season, your life. You are the opposite of what they said you are. Not slightly opposite, not mostly opposite, completely, categorically, entirely opposite. Where they said broken, God says being built. Where they said too much, God says exactly right. Where they said unstable, God says deeply feeling. Where they said damaged, God says refined by fire. Where they said a failure, God says in preparation for something they cannot imagine. Where they said you would never amount to anything, God says what I am bringing you into is beyond anything they have the capacity to perceive. Every single definition they placed on you was the lie version of a truth about you that was too powerful for them to name honestly. And God has been keeping the real definition safe, holding it close, waiting for exactly this moment to begin returning it to you in full. Nothing about your life has been accidental. Not the attack, not the false words, not the years of living under a definition that never fit. Not the isolation it created, not the exhaustion of carrying someone else's lie about you while knowing in the deepest part of yourself that it was not true. All of it was part of a journey that was always moving toward this, toward the truth, toward the emergence, toward the moment when the God who made you steps fully into the space that the lie occupied and begins replacing it, piece by piece, with the reality of who He created you to be. That moment is now. This is it, not some future version of now. This exact moment, as these words are landing in your spirit, as something that has been held tight for too long begins to release, as the false definition begins to lose its grip, and the true one begins to settle into the places inside you that were always waiting for it. This is the moment. This is the turning. This is God speaking the truth over the lie. This is the record being set straight. This is chosen ones being called by their real name again after years of answering to something they were never supposed to answer to. You were never what they said. You were always what God said. And now the world, the specific corner of it that God is taking you into, is about to meet who you really are. Not the edited version, not the apologetic version, not the version that makes itself small to make others comfortable. The real you, the full you. The you that was chosen before you were formed, prepared through everything you survived, and released into purpose at exactly the timing that God, who makes no mistakes and misses no detail, has always intended. Walk out of this video differently than you walked into it. Walk out of it with your head slightly higher, your shoulders slightly more open, your spirit slightly less compressed by a definition that was never yours to carry. Walk out of it knowing that the lie has an expiration date that God has already set. Walk out of it knowing that truth is rising in your life with an inevitability that no human opposition has the power to stop. Walk out of it knowing that every person who believed the lie about you is going to witness the truth about you with their own eyes. And walk out of it, most of all, knowing this: God never believed a single word they said, not one syllable, not for a moment. He has always known exactly who you are, and who you are, chosen one, is extraordinary. You always were, you always will be. And now it is time for the rest of the world to find out. God bless you. The truth has won. It always was going to. And you, the real you, the one they tried so hard to erase, is still here, still rising, still chosen, still becoming everything that was placed inside you before the world had the opportunity to speak a single word about who you were supposed to be.